A simple woman bent over the smoking engine of a gleaming luxury sports coupe worth more than most homes, while its owner stood there humiliated as limousines of board members glided past. The millionaire was about to dismiss her like hired help until he saw the sapphire ring glinting on her grease-stained finger. In that moment, his billion-dollar empire began to crumble. But before the world discovers how this simple woman, once deemed too poor even to be noticed, would leave billionaires humiliated and fully exposed. Drop your city in the comments. Let the world see how far these stories travel. The Pacific Coast Highway stretched like a ribbon of melting asphalt under the merciless California sun. Heat waves danced above the pavement, creating mirages that looked like pools of water, illusions that vanished as quickly as Thomas Weber's carefully planned future was about to. At precisely 2:47 p.m., his midnight blue Italian luxury sports coupe, a machine whose monthly payments exceeded most people's rent, decided to stage its own rebellion. The temperature gauge shot into the red zone, followed by an ominous hissing sound that crescendoed into a full theatrical display of white smoke billowing from beneath the hood. Thomas Weber, heir to the Weber industrial empire, and soon-to-be CEO, found himself stranded on the shoulder of the highway, watching his meticulously scheduled life evaporate, along with his engine coolant. "Perfect," he muttered, loosening his designer silk tie, a gift from his father to commemorate today's board meeting. The silk felt like a noose around his neck as he checked his Swiss luxury watch. In exactly 12 minutes, he was supposed to walk into the boardroom. In 13 minutes, the vote would make him CEO. In 14 minutes, he'd control an empire worth billions built on commercial real estate and, more importantly, water rights across California. But right now, the man who was about to inherit control over millions of gallons of water couldn't even get his car to move an inch. He jabbed at his phone screen, but the signal bars mocked him with their absence, leaving the future. CEO humiliated by something as simple as a dead zone. His assistant, efficiently sitting in the boardroom with his presentation materials, might as well have been on another planet. That's when he heard it, the distinctive rumble of an engine that had seen better decades. A battered red pickup truck, its paint faded to a dusty pink by years of sun exposure, pulled onto the shoulder behind him. The truck bore the scars of honest labor dents that told stories, rust spots that spoke of reliability over appearance, and a toolbox in the bed that had clearly seen daily use. The door creaked open with the sound of metal that had earned its complaints, and out stepped someone who looked like she'd wandered in from a different tax bracket entirely. She wore faded jeans with authentic wear at the knees. Not the artificial distressing found in boutiques, but the kind earned through actual work. Her plaid shirt sleeves rolled to the elbows revealed arms tanned by outdoor labor. Her hands, he noticed, immediately carried the honorable stains of motor oil badges of genuine expertise rather than corporate climbing. No designer labels, no pretense, no artifice, just competence wrapped in humility. Need help. Her voice cut through the steam, and his frustration with surprising authority. There was something in her tone, not deference, not awe at his obvious wealth, but simple human concern mixed with professional assessment. Thomas barely glanced at her, his fingers dancing frantically across his phone screen. "I need a professional tow service, not..." He gestured vaguely at her appearance, letting the unfinished sentence hang in the air, like the contempt it carried. Just then a convoy of chauffeured executive sedans glided past his board members, each one counting the seconds, until they could use his absence against him. James Harrington, his chief rival for the CEO position, actually slowed down enough to lower his tinted window. "Running late, Weber." The smirk in his voice was audible even over the purring of a chauffeured sedan. "Should I tell them to start without you? I'm sure the board would understand if you've had some mechanical difficulties." Thomas felt his carefully constructed image crumbling like ancient parchment. Here he was, the presumptive CEO, being rescued by someone who looked too poor to even ride in his car, let alone fix it. The woman, however, seemed utterly unfazed by the parade of power, focusing instead on his wounded vehicle with the intensity of a surgeon examining a patient. "You can wait for your professional," she said calmly, already walking toward his car. "But from the sound of that hissing and the color of that smoke you've got, maybe 10 minutes before your engine block cracks. But from the heat, then you're looking at a complete engine replacement instead of a simple fix." She didn't wait for permission before popping the hood release. The wave of steam that erupted made Thomas step back, but she moved forward, peering into the mechanical chaos with practiced eyes. "Cooling system failure," she diagnosed with clinical precision. Specifically, your water pump gave out, which triggered a cascade failure in your radiator system. These Italian engines, all that power but surprisingly fragile when one component fails, reminds me of certain business empires. Thomas bristled at the comparison. And what exactly would you know about business empires? She glanced up from the engine, a knowing smile playing at the corners of her mouth. More than you'd think, Mr. Weber. I read the business section every morning with my coffee. Water rights acquisition in the Central Valley, isn't it? That's your family's real moneymaker. Not the flashy downtown developments everyone sees, but controlling the water everyone needs. He stared at her, caught completely off guard. Most people saw Weber Industrial as a construction empire, not understanding that their real power lay in systematically acquiring water rights across drought-prone California. This woman in work clothes understood his family's business better than most of his executives. I'm Maya, she said, extending a hand that he noticed was small but strong, calloused but graceful. I own Esperanza Mechanics, about 10 miles south of here. And despite what you might think, I am professional help. Another sedan crawled past. Thomas could see Patricia Chen, the CFO, craning her neck to look. He imagined tomorrow's boardroom whispers. Weber couldn't even make it to his own coronation. Had to be rescued by some local mechanic. Listen, Thomas said, pulling out his Italian leather wallet with the reflexive motion of someone who believed money could solve any inconvenience. I appreciate the roadside diagnosis, but I need to get to a crucial meeting. Here's something for your trouble. She straightened up, meeting his eyes with a steadiness that made him falter mid-sentence. I don't need your charity. Mr. Weber, I need to know if you want your car fixed or not. I can get you running in 7 minutes, long enough to reach the city and your meeting. Or you can wait 2 hours for a tow truck. In this heat, miss your coronation entirely and explain to your board why the future CEO couldn't solve a simple transportation problem. The word coronation made him look at her more carefully. She knew exactly what today meant. This wasn't random kindness. This was someone who understood the game being played. Fix it, he said curtly, pocketing his wallet. She moved with an efficiency that bordered on artistry. From her truck's toolbox, organized with military precision, she selected exactly what she needed. No wasted motion, no hesitation. Tools appeared and disappeared like a magician's props, each one serving its purpose before being returned to its designated place. Your father had a similar problem once. She commented, her hands working deep in the engine compartment. About 15 years ago, different car, same stretch of highway, same arrogance too. Thomas felt a chill despite the heat. You fixed my father's car. No, she said, adjusting something he couldn't see. I was too young then, but I watched someone else try to help him. He threw money at them and drove away on a temporary fix, just like you're about to. Never addressed the real problem, just covered it up until it failed catastrophically later. She worked in silence for a moment, then added, funny how patterns repeat. In engines, in business, in the way powerful people treat those they consider beneath them. It was while she was tightening something with a specialized wrench that Thomas noticed her hands again, specifically the ring on her right ring finger. It seemed completely out of place, an antique setting of sterling silver, delicate filigree work, holding a sapphire that caught the afternoon light with unusual fire. The craftsmanship was exquisite, the kind of detail work that had become nearly extinct in modern jewelry making. That ring, he heard himself say, it's unusual. Her hand paused for just a fraction of a second, so brief that anyone else might have missed it. But Thomas had been trained since childhood to notice Tell's micro-expressions, the tiny betrayals of hidden emotion. Family heirloom, she said, her voice carefully neutral. My mother's. Now Maya faced a choice, should she, one, speak up and expose the fraud immediately, or two, gather more proof in silence, comment 1 or 2 below. Sterling silver setting, Thomas continued, something stirring in his memory like sediment in disturbed water. Sapphire from the Yogo Gulch mines in Montana. You can tell by that particular cornflower blue the way it holds light without enhancement. Only 3 jewelers in California ever worked with that specific style of setting. Hernandez and Sons closed in 1995. Goldsmith Associates bought out in 2001. And Oliveira Designs. She finished softly, her hands stilling completely now. Destroyed in a suspicious fire, 2005. The highway seemed to fall silent around them, even the passing traffic fading to white noise. Thomas felt his throat tighten as memories he'd buried surfaced like bodies in a drained lake. The Oliveira property, he said slowly. It had the largest natural aquifer in the county, prime development land, but the family wouldn't sell. She corrected her voice, carrying 2 decades of contained fury. Until Weber Industrial needed it for their new development, until a fire conveniently destroyed not just the jewelry business, but all the family's property records, until county assessors suddenly discovered errors in the original land surveys, until a young woman named Maya Oliveira lost everything, her family business, her inheritance, her home, until her mother died of a broken heart 6 months later, unable to fight anymore. She straightened up fully now, wiping her hands on a clean rag with mechanical precision. Her eyes met his, and Thomas saw in them not just anger, but something far more dangerous. Patient, methodical purpose. "Your engine will run now," she said. "But like I told you, it's a temporary fix. Just like the fix your father arranged 20 years ago. Papering over problems, buying silence, burying truth under concrete and glass." Thomas staggered backward a step. "You're Maya Sofia Oliveira," she confirmed. "The girl your father said was compensated fairly for her land, compensated with the threats, forged documents, and investigators who somehow never found accelerant at our workshop fire. The same girl who spent 15 years collecting evidence, tracking down former employees, finding the paper trail your father thought he'd burned." She reached into her truck and pulled out a worn leather folder, its edges softened by years of handling. Every forged signature, every bribed official, every threatened witness. "And tonight at your coronation ceremony, the one being held in the Weber Industrial Center, built literally on my family's stolen land, I'm going to expose it all." Thomas's phone buzzed with a text from his assistant. "5 minutes to meeting, bored, getting restless." "You could stop me," Maya continued, her voice steady as bedrock. "Call security, have me arrested for trespassing. Use your family's influence to bury this like you buried everything else. Or," Thomas asked, his mouth dry, "or you could remember who you wanted to be before your father carved you into his image. You could remember that night in your family's library when you found the original Oliveira documents and asked him why the dates didn't match. You could remember what he said when you questioned the ethics of it all." Thomas felt the ground shifting beneath him, like tectonic plates. "How could you possibly know about that?" "Because I did my homework, Mr. Weber. Just like I do with engines, I investigate, I trace connections. I find the weak points in systems." She closed the hood of his car with a gentle click. "Your car will get you to your meeting, but what happens after that? Whether you become CEO of an empire built on theft, or the man who finally tells the truth, that's your choice." She turned toward her truck, then paused. "One more thing. Your father didn't just steal our land, he stole our water rights. Every development Weber Industrial has built in the last 20 years relies on water that legally belongs to my family. Every contract, every deed, every sale, and all of it fraudulent. Tonight, the truth comes out." As she drove away, Thomas stood by his purring car holding his phone with nerveless fingers. The board was waiting. His father was waiting. His entire future was waiting. But for the first time in his life, Thomas Weber wondered if the future he'd been racing toward was worth the price of arrival. The Weber Industrial Center rose against the California sunset like a monument to ambition, its glass facade reflecting the dying light in shades of gold and crimson. The irony wasn't lost on Thomas as he parked in his reserved spot. This temple to corporate power stood exactly where the Oliveira family orchards once bloomed. Inside, the great hall buzzed with the energy of the state's elite tech moguls mingled with real estate titans. Politicians worked the room with practiced smiles, and society photographers captured every air kiss and power handshake. The marble floors imported from Italy at obscene expense gleamed under crystal chandeliers that had once graced a French palace. Thomas adjusted his tie in the reflection of a window, trying to quiet the storm in his mind. His father's text had been characteristically brief. 5 minutes late, unacceptable boardroom now. The private elevator whisked him to the executive floor where Ernesto Weber waited in the conference room, surrounded by board members who looked like circling sharks, sensing blood in the water. "Ah, Thomas." Ernesto's voice carried that dangerous silk tone that had terrified subordinates for decades. "How kind of you to join us." "Car trouble, I heard." "Minor mechanical issue," Thomas replied, taking his seat. "Resolved now." "By a roadside mechanic, no less," James Harrington added with barely concealed glee. "How resourceful." Ernesto's eyes narrowed slightly. The only sign of his displeasure. At 68, he remained an imposing figure. His silver hair was styled with military precision, his charcoal suit cut to emphasize shoulders that still carried the strength of his boxing days. But it was his eyes that commanded attention, pale blue, cold as Arctic ice, seeing everything and revealing nothing. "Shall we proceed with the vote?" Patricia Chen suggested diplomatically. "The reception downstairs is waiting." Indeed, Ernesto stood, his presence filling the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, today marks a transition, decades in the making. Thomas has proven himself capable of carrying the Weber legacy forward. His recent acquisition of the Riverside properties demonstrates the kind of strategic thinking that—" The conference room door opened. Oliveira walked in. She had transformed, but not in the way Thomas might have expected. Instead of trying to match the designer gowns downstairs, she wore a simple black dress that somehow carried more dignity than all the couture in the building. Her hair was pulled back in an elegant knot, and on her finger the sapphire ring caught the light like an accusation. "Forgive the interruption," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the stunned silence. "But I believe there's something the board should know before this vote." Security guards appeared instantly, but Ernesto raised a hand, stopping them. His face had gone pale, but his voice remained controlled. "Young lady, this is a private meeting. If you're catering staff, you're on the wrong floor." "I'm not catering staff, Mr. Weber. I'm Maya Oliveira, and I'm here to discuss water rights, specifically the ones your company has been using illegally for 20 years. The name hit the room like a thunderclap. Several board members old enough to remember shifted uncomfortably. Ernesto's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Thomas, his father's voice, carried a warning that had cowed executives for decades. "Call security now." But Thomas remained seated, his eyes fixed on Maya. "Let her speak." "Have you lost your mind?" Ernesto hissed. "Maybe I found it," Thomas replied quietly. "Go ahead, Ms. Oliveira." Maya opened her leather folder with deliberate calm. In 2005, Weber Industrial acquired the Oliveira family property through what was officially recorded as a standard real estate transaction. What the records don't show is the systematic campaign of intimidation that preceded it. She began laying out documents on the conference table. Forged environmental impact reports, falsified water table surveys, fire inspection records that somehow vanished after our workshop burned down a fire that was never properly investigated, despite clear signs of arson. The cameras flashed in rapid-fire bursts as Maya unfolded a scorched blueprint, one that still smelled faintly of smoke. Gas rippled through the crowd, and even the security guards hesitated, their hands frozen halfway to their radios as they recognized the gravity of what was unfolding. "This," Maya held up the charred document for all to see, "is the original survey map of my family's property. Notice the date stamp 3 weeks before the fire that supposedly destroyed all our records. See these markings?" Her finger traced faded pencil lines. These indicated the natural spring system that feeds the largest aquifer in the county, the same aquifer that was mysteriously discovered by Weber surveyors 6 months after our property burned. A photographer from the Los Angeles Times pushed forward his camera, capturing the damning evidence. The blueprint's edges were blackened, but the center remained legible, including a surveyor's note that read, "Water rights extend to full depth of aquifer. S value exceeds land value tenfold." "My father saved this from the fire," Maya continued, her voice cutting through the shocked murmurs. "He went back into the burning workshop, not for equipment or inventory, but for this piece of paper, because he knew that without proof we had nothing." Ernesto's carefully maintained composure began to crack. "This is absurd theater," he snarled, standing abruptly. "A desperate woman waving burnt paper and telling fairy tales." "Fairy tales." Maya pulled out another document. "Then explain this memo from your own files, Mr. Weber. Dated 2 months before the fire, subject line, Oliveira Problem Alternative Solutions. Would you like me to read your own words to the board?" She cleared her throat. "If the Oliveiras continue to refuse all offers, we may need to explore more creative approaches to acquisition. Their property records are poorly protected, and the workshop's fire insurance has lapsed. Sometimes nature provides opportunities where negotiation fails." The room erupted. Board members shouted questions, investors frantically dialed lawyers, and through it all, the cameras kept flashing, documenting the systematic unraveling of a corporate dynasty. Thomas watched his father's empire crumble in real time. the carefully constructed image of corporate respectability dissolving like sugar in rain. In that moment, he understood something profound. His entire life had been built on the ruins of another family's dreams. "There's one more thing," Maya announced, her voice cutting through the chaos. She pulled out a tattered photograph, its edges worn from years of handling. "This is my mother, Elena. Olivera, standing in our workshop 3 days before it burned. She's wearing the ring I wear now, the one Mr. Weber's son recognized on the highway today." She held the photo up to the cameras. "My mother died believing justice would never come, but she was wrong. Sometimes justice just takes the scenic route." The security guards, no longer sure whose orders to follow, stepped aside as federal agents entered the boardroom. The head agent approached the table, his badge glinting under the crystal chandelier. "Ernesto Weber, you're under arrest for wire fraud, conspiracy, and violation of federal water rights. You have the right to remain silent." As the handcuffs clicked shut, Ernesto locked eyes with his son. "Everything I did was for you," he said, his voice a mixture of fury and desperation. "For our legacy." Thomas stood slowly, feeling the weight of years of complicity. "No, Dad. Everything you did was for yourself. The legacy you built was made of other people's broken dreams." Patricia Chen, the longtime CFO, stepped forward with trembling hands. "Miss Oliveira, on behalf of every one of us who stayed silent, I'm sorry." The room, moments ago frozen in shock, erupted into applause that left the simple woman and her sapphire ring shining under the lights, the sound of humbled power echoing down the marble halls. Reporters later wrote that her quiet nod left them speechless. Proof that integrity needs no microphone to be heard. The aftermath of the revelation sent shockwaves through California's business community. The next morning, headlines screamed across front pages: "Weber Empire built on ashes. The mechanic who toppled a dynasty. And simple woman brings billionaire to his knees." But Maya Oliveira wasn't interested in headlines. She stood in the empty lot where her family's workshop once thrived, the morning sun casting long shadows across the scorched earth. Thomas found her there, no longer wearing his expensive suit, but simple jeans and a work shirt. "I've been thinking about what you said," he began hesitantly, "about fixing the real problems, not just covering them up." Maya didn't turn around. And I want to help make this right. Not just returning the land and water rights, though that's already in motion. I mean really fixing what my family broke." Now she did turn, studying his face with those penetrating eyes that had seen through his father's lies. "Why should I trust you? You're a Weber." "I was," Thomas corrected. "But last night I legally changed my name back to my mother's, Thomas Reed. And I've liquidated my entire trust fund. Every penny of Weber money I've ever received is going into a restoration fund for all the families my father destroyed." Maya's eyebrows rose slightly. "That's unexpected. You said it yourself. Patterns repeat unless someone breaks them." He gestured to the empty lot. "I can't bring your mother back. I cannot undo 20 years of injustice. But I can help rebuild what was stolen. And maybe," he paused, vulnerability showing through his formerly polished exterior, "maybe learn what honest work actually means." For the first time since he'd met her, Maya smiled, not the knowing smirk from the highway, but something genuine and warm. "Well, Mr. Reed, I do need help in the shop, but I should warn you, I pay minimum wage and the work is hard." "I'm counting on it," Thomas replied. 6 months later, the new Oliveira Mechanics and Community Workshop stood proudly where ashes had once settled. The building was modest but solid, with large windows that let in natural light, and a teaching garage where local youth learned automotive skills for free. Maya worked on an engine, while Thomas, his hands now bearing their own honorable grease stains, assisted a teenager with a brake job. The sapphire ring caught the light as she gestured, no longer a symbol of loss, but of resilience. Channel 7 called again. Thomas mentioned wiping his hands on a rag. "They want to do a follow-up story, the billionaire who became a mechanic's assistant." Maya shook her head. "Tell them we're too busy actually working to pose for cameras." Outside, the community garden thrived, irrigated by water from the restored aquifer. The Weber Industrial Center had been converted into a public resource center, its grand halls now hosting legal clinics, small business incubators, and environmental education programs. Ernesto Weber served his sentence in federal prison. His empire dissolved, his name becoming a cautionary tale in business schools about the cost of unchecked ambition. As the sun set over the Pacific, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Mayabao and Thomas closed up shop. They'd rebuilt more than just a business. They'd restored faith in the idea that truth, patience, and simple human decency could triumph over greed and power. The simple woman they thought was too poor to matter exposed their billion-dollar lie and left them speechless. She'd shown the world that sometimes the most powerful force isn't money or influence. It's the courage to stand for truth when standing costs everything. True worth isn't worn, it's lived. And sometimes the humblest among us carry the most precious truths waiting for the moment when someone finally bothers to truly see them. If this story moved you, subscribe to our channel for more powerful tales where dignity defeats arrogance, where simple people show us what real worth looks like. Hit that notification bell, because every week we prove the meek don't just inherit the earth. Sometimes they take it back. Where are you watching from? Have you ever seen someone's true worth leave others speechless? What would you have done in Thomas's position? Stayed silent to protect your inheritance or spoken up for justice? Share your stories below. Remember, in a world that measures worth by possessions, sometimes the most valuable thing you can own is the truth.